Welcome to Ottawa Experts. I'm Alfonso Cuadra, and I will be your host for this evening. I am an entrepreneur for 18 years. I'm an author of the book, From the Ground Up, You're 3 Steps Away from Living the Life of Your Dreams. I'm also a host here on Rogers 22 with my own show, Success by Design Show. You can catch it on Rogers 22. And today we are speaking about productivity. I brought some experts here in Ottawa, some local experts. First, I'm going to start with Anne. She is president of Productive to the Max, a productivity specialist. And she will increase your productivity for greater profit and better performance enhancement. And of course, we brought Chris Bailey. He dedicated a full year to being productive. He started a website, A Year of Productivity. And he did anything they asked for him to be the most productive person. Actually, the TED organization, can you believe this? They said he might be the most productive man you'd ever hope to meet. That's from TED. Wow, that's and of course, Dr. Tim Pychyl. He's an associate professor of psychology at Carleton University, author of Solving the Procrastination Puzzle. So this is the book here, and of course, if you do call in, you will get an opportunity to. We have 2 here. So the first 2 callers, I'm gonna say the number if you have some questions. 613-728-1001. And of course, Dr. Pychyl has researched procrastination for over 20 years. Wow. Yes. So today we're talking about productivity. So before we get into this deep conversation that I'm hoping a lot of Ottawa people are going to need or are starving for, tell us a little bit about Anne Max and how you became the productivity specialist.
Well, I actually started off as organized to the max. As a professional organizer. Yes. So my background is actually retail, born, bred in retail, and HR and administration. And about 15 years ago, for the first time in my life, I lost my job. And I still don't know why, but it was kind of a shock. And I thought, what am I going to do with myself? And I read an article that stated the top 10 businesses of the future. And one of them was professional organizing and productivity. So I started the business.
And here you are.
And here I am.
So you help companies become more productive.
I help companies, I help individuals, I help teams become more productive through coaching, training, speaking, and consulting.
Beautiful. Mr. Bailey, you took this to another level. You started a website, A Year of Productivity, and you decided to live a life of productivity. Now going on after your year of productivity, now it's a life productivity. So
I can't use the Year of Productivity name anymore. Now
exactly. So how did this come about? How did this start? And what has happened during this year?
I've been obsessed with this idea of becoming more productive for the better part of a decade. And so when I graduated last May, I received a couple full-time job offers, but I decided to kind of set those aside for the time being, and take a year of my life and just devour this topic I'm the most passionate about. So I interviewed the greats. I interviewed Tim, for an example, one of the greats. I interviewed these people from all over the world. I conducted these weird productivity experiments on myself to play around and experiment with how to become more productive. And there were some really fun ones, like I meditated for 35 hours over a week. I worked 90-hour weeks for a month, alternating between working 90 hours one week, then 20, then 90, then 20. I did other ones that were kind of off-center to play around with productivity from those angles. Like I watched 70 hours of TED Talks in a week, 296 TED Talks. So I approached productivity from all these angles, and the idea connected with folks for the project. It was a lot of fun.
That's incredible. And it sounds like great experiments. I think we want to know a little bit about that later on. And of course, Dr. Pychyl, you wrote this book, but how did you become so fascinated with procrastination?
Well, it is the flip side of productivity in so many ways. In fact, when you said 90 hours a week, I'm thinking you're ready for graduate school.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then especially the next week, you don't work 90 hours a week. But I was actually studying people's goal pursuit. My thesis supervisor and mentor was Dr. Brian Little. He's a retired professor from Carleton, fantastic psychologist, and he introduced me to thinking about people's personal projects. So for quite a long time, I studied people's personal projects, and in a sense, their thrivings or their flourishings, which I think is a bigger umbrella even for productivity. So as a psychologist, I don't just think of making goods, which is the kind of idea of the basic idea of products and productivity, but of flourishing as human beings. In any case, when I was studying their goal pursuit, what I realized is what really affected people is what they said they were going to do and didn't do. So if I was going to understand their well-being, I had to understand why they become their own worst enemies. And in that sense, I understand a lot about productivity and flourishing because I understand where our roadblocks are, right? If I'm going to get up and be productive every day, I got to understand, well, when does that break down? Why am I not productive? So that's why I think we're going to be a good team tonight.
Oh, we brought the dream team here this evening, and of course, just to let you know, solving the puzzle of productivity. Please call is 613-728-1001, and the first 2 callers to call in and ask a question about productivity, not just call in and hang up, right? But ask a question. Ask a question about productivity. We have 2 books here for you. We're going to send it right to you. And we're going to start with Ann Max. I'm going to ask you a question. How can we be more productive at the workplace?
How can we be more productive at the workplace? Very good question. We can be more productive at the workplace by essentially going through 5 steps. We have to know who we are. You know, when people think about productivity, they ask, you know, can you help me with my to-do list? Can you help me with my calendar? Can you just give me some tips and tricks, right?
So they have a to-do list like this and say, how do I get it all done?
That's right. So they want instant results, right? And I say to them, you know, I can help you with your calendar. I can help you with your to-do list. I can help you with your goals and your procrastination and everything. But until you know really who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there and where you want to go, that's not going to work. It's going to be like putting perfume on a pig because it's going to come right off, right? So
sort of like doing that inner work first.
You have to do the inner work first. You have to know who you are. You have to know what type of person you are, what you want out of life, where you're going, how you're going to get there, and then you need to set an action plan. Then we can start with the productivity tips, okay? By looking at how you're implementing your action plan, what you do with your action plan.
So this for you works both sides, life and work.
Life and work, definitely. And I have found that it doesn't work without the life.
Now, Chris,
so to speak.
What is the most informative, maybe a little bit funny experiment that you've done that you can share with us that kind of, brought things to light?
There were so many. I did probably 20 or 30 experiments over the course of the year. The one that I personally got the most out of was meditating for 35 hours over the course of the week. And it's weird because, you know, meditation doesn't really, it's not related to your work in a sense, but it really does do interesting things to your mind. Like meditation boosts the amount of gray matter in your brain. It helps you focus better. It works out your attention muscle. And so I didn't really expect to, you know, learn a ton from that experiment, but it's the experiment I learned the most out of. And I think the biggest lesson I learned from that was the importance of slowing down when you want to become more productive. Because a lot of people equate productivity with doing more, but I don't think it's necessarily doing more. I think it's accomplishing more. And like you said, Anne, connecting that with the kind of person that you are, that really cuts to the heart of what it takes to become more productive. Just slowing down, working really, really deliberately, and working smarter and not just harder were some great things I learned from that.
So what is one particular experiment that you did that kind of shows that?
That shows we're
slowing
down?
It down, or you know, something that you did for your viewers on your website.
Another one was, and this is kind of a smaller one, but I shut my phone off from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I go to bed at 9:30, which is a few minutes away, I think.
So there's a 1 hour window.
Yes. So it was this kind of slow period where I could plan out my day and ease out of my day and ease into the next one, and plan out my day in the morning while I'm at the gym before I begin the day to kind of, you know, live very, very deliberately for that day. And I think that's kind of the key, whether you're doing that with your personal life or your work life.
Love it. So I'm on the blog. You know, I take all your tips.
Good.
And I'm going to do it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. So,
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Dr. Pychyl, why do we procrastinate?
That's a great question. That mystical land, tomorrow, where all the human motivation lies.
Yes.
In a real sense, we have a 6-year-old alive and well inside of us, and we simply give in to feel good. I have a 6-year-old at home. He's almost 7 now. And I have a 9-year-old too, they're very much similar. They make deals with the devil all the time. And I'll say something like, Alex, it's time to make your bed. And he said, Dad, I don't feel like it. I don't want to. Alex, I didn't ask how you felt or what you want to do. You know, it's time to make your bed. And that answer, I don't want to, I don't feel like it, to a 6-year-old might stand. You have to understand that that's not a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
But adults run around saying that all the time. I don't feel like it. I don't want to.
If
And
they
it
don't
really
say
is.
it, they'll think it.
Yeah, so it's a short-term, emotion-focused coping strategy. Put it off, feel good now. But really, you don't completely feel good. That's the interesting thing about it. It undermines your well-being a little bit even now because of the emotion guilt. And it really, you run up to it later on. Present self and future self are thought about very differently, even from a neurological perspective. Research with functional magnetic resonance imaging shows us that when we think about present self, a different part of our brain is active than we think about future self. So we literally do think like Homer Simpson. You know, that's a problem for future Homer. You know, he captures it so well that way that we will put off to the future because we treat future self like a stranger, and we don't do that person any favors. But you know, I'll go back to what Anne said. Anne said you have to have an action plan, and she used an important word, implement. So I would say a key thing is move, from vague goal intentions like I'm going to lose some weight or I'm going to earn some more money, to what's your implementation intention? What are you actually going to do? In situation X, I'm going to do behavior Y. And I can go back to Chris's point and say, and a real resource is meditation. Because meditation helps you bring non-judgmental awareness to, what am I thinking about now? Oh, I'm worrying again. I'm worrying about my failure. I'm worrying about the what ifs. Okay, that's fine, it happens. We all have monkey mind. Let's just bring it back. That's what meditation teaches us, that non-judgmental awareness of, I'm over here, I'm going to come back here and just get started again. So that's a lot of the pieces
So do you
together.
guys have any three of you, do you have any case studies where someone has taken some of your information and said, you know what, I've turned my life around? Because you know what, I'll tell you right now, you know, you've sold a lot of books, and out of, you know, we tell this book, you know, you can solve your procrastination problems. There'll be 100 people that buy it. Out of those 100 people, you know, maybe 10 might read it.
Yes.
Right? And then maybe 5 might look into it. Maybe 1 will act. So is there any case studies that you guys might be able to offer that where someone took their life from point A to point B in using some of the information you provided?
Well, I have a case study, and of course we don't mention names because everything is very confidential. But this was someone who was in a very high-level organization who was moving up very, very quickly up into the higher levels and needed some tightening up, okay? She was a manager. And then she sort of went up into the various levels. And as she went up, she realized that she needed more time. As you go up in the organization, you need more time to think outside the box. You don't want to get into the weeds. And she realized she was in the weeds. She also realized she needed some more information in order to get where she was going. And she was extremely intelligent, extremely lovely, and just took to it like a duck to water. It was unbelievable. And as a result, she jumped about 3 or 4 levels in the organization and is at the highest level now, which nobody has ever achieved.
So is this a common thread that you guys see that, you know, once someone it just sinks in, they get it and then they can move on? Do you find that, you know, with people? I'm sure people have interacted with you,
Not
people
all
that you're
the people.
not all the people, but someone needs to either be internalized or something. Something clicks in somebody.
It needs to click, and that's the key, I think. You know, I've been fortunate that a lot of people have connected with the project. I haven't started working one-on-one with folks until very recently, but you know, it's always great when somebody sends that email and says, you know, I read something that you wrote and I did it, and then my life is different. But there's this tendency, and I think I fall into this tendency myself, to kind of see the productivity information out there and read it, and it's very entertaining and engaging to read it, but not action it afterwards. You know, just kind of see it as entertainment as opposed to, you know, practical things you can do to actually change your life and make it better, right?
I think you need a coach for that.
So
possibly.
we are talking productivity here. Of course, the number is 613-728-1001. If you want to win one of these books, call in. More on productivity after this. and we're talking about productivity, work and life. How can you be more productive? Here in Ottawa, we have some experts. And of course, if you want to win this book, the number is right here, 613-728-1001. And of course, the first 2 callers will get an opportunity to win a book. And of course, it has to be a productivity question, right, guys?
Yeah.
And we have our experts here, and I have a question, okay? Because I'm a big believer on the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Basically, 20% of the things that you do actually equal for 80% of your results.
Yeah, great
now,
principle.
how do we keep people from spinning their wheels? So, any one of the experts here?
There's a cool thing that I forget who said this originally, who came up with this kind of technique. But the technique is you list all the tasks that you're responsible for in your work. You just get them out there on a sheet of paper in front of you. And then once you have all those tasks out of your head that you're responsible for, you ask yourself, okay, if I could only do one of these tasks all day long, which of these tasks would add the most value to who I work for? And then you do that a second time. You ask, okay, which of these tasks would add the second most amount? Then you do it a third time. And then those 3 tasks or 4 tasks, or some people even do 5, if you're crazy like that, I guess you could. But those are where you deliver 80 to 90% of the value to whoever you work for. And especially like you said, especially when you're in a company, you get paid for achieving very, very specific and very measurable results that come directly from these tasks. Everything else that you can do, you should shrink it, or you should delegate it, or you can outsource it with a lot of these new technologies. And that's a great exercise.
So
it's the best
is
one
that
I
part
found.
of the coaching here? Or
Oh yeah,
is
you
that,
have to deal with what brings you the greatest return. I'll give you an example. In dealing with salespeople, I coach a lot of salespeople. They'll come in and they'll say something like, "Oh God, I wasted half of my week on a client who was not a very high-paying client, and they're just a pain in the neck. They call and they bug me and everything else." Okay. So what I said to him eventually was, I want you to bring a list of your clients, and we're going to get rid of the bottom 10%. And he went, "Oh my God, I can't do that. I can't do that." I said, "Yeah, you're going to do that because they are not bringing you a great return.
You're spending that energy on the ones that aren't giving you the results.
And you're not allowing the universe to come in." So he came back a couple of weeks later and he said to me, "I can't believe it. It just worked wonders because I got a huge contract because I wasn't wasting my time on those things that didn't bring me a great return." So now he's a great advocate for that.
Dr. Pychyl, you have something?
There's the inside work there, though. Like the coach helped the person pass that,
Yeah.
but there was a reluctance to let go. And there's 2 things. The first is sometimes it's the perfectionism. Like, why aren't people letting go? Because they don't want to just spend 20. They don't trust themselves. No, I got to worry about this. I've got to do more. Or they won't get rid of the bottom. There's something still feeding that. Sometimes it's that those clients that aren't really worth the time, but they're easier and they don't put me on the line. Like I'm afraid to go after those big clients because then if I don't get it, it's clear that I don't have it. If I spend myself that time down here, it's self-handicapping in a sense. So there's that self-work that Anne started with, right? And so
work.
that's right. And along the way as a coach,
already.
that's right. I just was going to say that. I know that Anne would have started there because otherwise she would have never had the person jettisoned. It's like, Anne talked about being an organizer earlier. Well, work with someone who hoards. You have to get.
Do you find some of this, procrastination, things like this, is hereditary? Like it's handed down
yes.
from
Well,
from
organizing is like hoarders.
Yeah.
Is definitely hereditary because you've been brought up like that, or you go completely the opposite. You get very, very neat and tidy and become a perfectionist. Yeah. But I have a question for you.
Sure, can I just add a little bit on hereditary first? So there was a recent study to show that there's a strong genetic component to procrastination. And it's also very much related to...
There's a gene.
Yeah, well, we like to say a gene, but there are always many genes influencing things. But the same genetic variation explains the phenotypic variation, the trait. And it's also related to impulsivity. And so people who are highly impulsive, who can't protect one intention from another. But I wanted to say that there is quite a bit of evidence. But Anne has a question.
So wait a second for the question. I want people, we're talking about this book here.
Yes.
And 613-728-1001 is the number. And of course, Anne can ask the question. The people out there can ask the question. If they call in, they can win a copy of this book, Solving the Procrastination Puzzle. So, okay, ask a question.
I'm going to send one to Anne anyhow.
I'm going to get it. Do people not procrastinate out of fear?
Well, fear of failure talked about a great deal, but one of the studies we published in 2012 showed an interesting, when you take into account more than just fear of failure, an interesting pattern, and that has to do with competence or confidence. So people who have high fear of failure, but competence, and they're different things. So I can be worried, but really have a lot of competence. And what that does is fuel my approach. You don't get procrastination in those people. But if I have a feeling of low competence and fear of failure, then I cope by avoiding. So fear of failure can be at the heart of procrastination, but it depends on other things like, well, how competent do I feel? I don't want to play it up too much, because the clinicians will tell you certainly fear of failure is a big predictor. The researchers will say we don't see a lot of the variance in procrastination accounted for by fear of failure. So it's there, but it's not the biggest predictor. The biggest predictor is giving in to feel good. We all want to feel good now, short-term reward.
So I'm going to ask this to you guys, because we're 2014.
Yes.
Workspace has changed. Do we not agree? Do now it used to be this big, big industrial workspaces. I have all these people working, doing all kinds of things. Yeah. Now people work more from home. Does that change? Can you actually be more productive at home? You're sitting in your Zen space, you're focused, and then Uncle Billy comes in, and your kids are throwing balls at your head. Can you actually be more productive from home?
You can. Absolutely. You can. Yeah. But you have to run it like a business. So you have to get up. You can't do it in your curlers.
So business hours.
Business hours, business dress. Actually business. So you say to your children, from 9 to 11, I am working, I'm closing the door, don't bother me. Okay? You have to have it very, very structured. If you're the type, what I call the squirrel type, okay, that's very, very easily distracted, then you have to make structures so that you won't be distracted, okay? Because we have a lot of people who are squirrels.
What do we do with our loved ones? God love them, but they come in and there's always an emergency. What's the emergency? We have to get something at Walmart. So how do we cope with our loved ones?
Well, I think you should probably say to your loved one, if you'd like to eat next week, you should let me continue working.
Yeah, working at home can be much more productive because, as I answered earlier, you have to get yourself out of the weeds sometimes. And at the workplace, sometimes you're in the weeds because of other people.
That's right.
And when you're at home, you can isolate yourself and then do what Chris talked about, which is take that list and start saying, what is it I'm going to do here, and do the real priorities.
It's funny, if you ask people where they're the most productive, people that work out of an office, hardly anyone says the office. People say, okay, maybe if they're in the office at 8 p.m. when everybody's gone home, but maybe they say the coffee shop, maybe they say on the weekend, maybe they say at the cottage. Hardly anyone calls the office their most productive word. So you have to play around with that a bit.
Which is crazy, because we all have to go to the office, right? And it's kind of in our culture to go to the office, where we're not actually being the most productive at the office.
I know, but our offices are now open. They're all open, so you can't be as productive.
Which leads me to my next question, is, if you do have to go to an office, how do you stop that water cooler talk, that keeps everybody from being productive? How do you stop the coworker from coming into your cubicle and talking about,
the interruptions?
The interruptions. Like, how do we focus?
Well, what you do is, if you have your plan and your action plan, what you have to do is you have to say to yourself, I am very productive, I deserve to say no. And this person who's interrupting me is preventing me from working. And I've been working hard on this. I've been working hard on my procrastination, on my 2080, and I want to achieve my goals. So I deserve to say no. And then we have to learn nice ways to say no.
What are some nice ways?
No.
Yes, I'd love to talk to you about this, but I can do it at 11:30. I can't do that right now.
That's right.
I love that. Nobody's going to start talking before their lunch. No. They're not going to take their own time. Exactly. They only want to take company time, right, to talk about the gossip. No, I love that. I love that.
I can give you 5 minutes of my time, and then, or perhaps Mary could help you. Somebody else.
Chris, how do we become more productive at work?
That's a very big question.
Yes.
I kind of have an answer out of left field from that. And, I think that comes, I kind of have a different approach to productivity. I see it as kind of the combination of how you manage your time, plus how you manage your energy, plus how you manage your attention and what you focus on. And where your time, your energy, and your attention kind of meet in the middle, that's how productive you are on a daily basis. And you know, you can download a million to-do list apps on your phone. I think the App Store actually has a million. Now they're up to a million to-do list apps. They're all free.
There's so many
with
different
paid
ones.
things inside
Yeah.
of them. But you know, that they kind of focus too much on the time space of productivity and not enough on the energy and the attention space of productivity.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they can manage your time like a guru, but if you can manage your time but you don't get enough sleep, or you don't eat well, or you don't exercise, you know, energy is kind of the fuel that you burn throughout the day in order to get stuff done. And it's absolutely essential that you have that, you know, because that's where you channel your energy into your time throughout the course of the day.
So,
So
if you're tired and you're under stress, it's very difficult for you to be more productive.
You can't get it done. You resent it, and you have to learn to focus.
Yeah.
And you can't focus if you're tired. You can't focus if you're hungry. Okay, and focus is the most important thing. Okay, and focus on the fact that you want to get all that garbage out of your head and not think about what you have to do, but think about how you're going to do it, how you're going to implement it. So that means you've got to be very healthy.
But it's amazing because one of the first things the three of us said when we sat down here is that we usually go to bed at this time.
We're not going to be very productive.
I was very tempted to say no when you invited me, just because I looked at the time. I live out in the country, and I thought, but I want to do that for the community. But I thought to myself, I have to be very careful because it will be disruptive, right? And I think that's what you see with a lot of procrastinators. They binge work. They have this idea that I work better under pressure. That's just a lie you say earlier in the week when you're trying to justify that you don't want to do it now. Nobody that we've studied on the day that they're finally getting to it says, I'm glad I waited till now because I work so much better under pressure. That's just a myth. Now there are some assets to pressure. It helps us hyper-focus, so some people enjoy that. But the question comes back to where are you getting your motivation earlier? Even the three things that Chris laid out a moment ago. Have you not learned how to focus your attention? Does it have to be time pressure that puts your attention to the task? Because that's really a symptom that you haven't learned some other good strategies. But for the three of us, health is really important, like sleep, nutrition. You can't be productive if you're not a healthy person.
Yeah. Well, let me tell people that right now they can call in 613-728-1001. That's 613-728-1001. And of course, if they call in, they ask a question about productivity, they'll get an opportunity. There's not one, but two. But don't procrastinate. Don't wait till. don't wait till. So we're having a good time here talking about productivity.
We are.
A quick little thing I wanted to add. You had a case study before the last. Just a little bit of I'm going to commercial, but.
Well, I get many because I do this podcast on iTunes, and so millions of people have listened to them. And as Chris said, some people spend time just one after another. And at the break, Anne was talking about the fact that in her coaching, people will go from one coach to the next. And I know with procrastination books, for example, there's so many out there, and you could read them all. In fact, when you joked at the beginning, people will pick up the book and not read it. I worked hard at making it so short that's hard to do. Because I agree. Now, so case studies. I get people that write to me and say they've turned a corner because they've internalized Anne's notion of making an actionable list and then making implementation intentions. In this situation, I'm going to do this behavior. So all of these are potential breakthroughs. And again, when Anne and I were chatting informally, she talked about the fact that you'll be with a client and then one day they just get it. And they repeat back to you something you said a long time ago, but now they've internalized it. So you do get these real breakthrough moments, Alfonso, but you also just get the hard work every day. There's not this mythical moment where you're just a different person, because life has this kind of up and down nature to it too. Along the way of being a productive person, you also might have illness or family illness or crisis. So you have to have a lot of other volitional skills to draw on every day to get up and do it again.
So we're going to come back. We're talking productivity, more after this.
Good point.
We are back. We are talking productivity here for the Ottawa folks. Yes, we have a panel of experts here. And of course, the phone number is, I forgot that number again. Why did I put that away? 728-1001. And if you do call in, you will get a copy of this book, of course, by Mr. Pychyl, Dr. Pychyl. Of course, I want to ask a question because we talked about it earlier. People getting ready. You call people, is it done? No, you see, I had to get my office ready, right? You see, the phone was on the left-hand side, and I'm really right-handed, so I had to reconfigure my whole office, because I can't get my work done until that phone is on the right-hand side. I have to read all these books before I get ready. I have to clean out the garage, and I have to, why do people have a feeling that they need to get ready?
I wish they'd come to my house and do all those things. Well, it's part of the self-deception of not wanting to do it. Does that go back to my 6-year-old son? I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's a part of you that says you don't want to do it. So you start making these moral substitutions, something else you thought about doing. But it could even be more seductive than that. So something isn't going well. Say you're at your desk and you think, I'll go get a snack. And you go to the fridge and you grab the yogurt and you see that it leaves a ring. You think, it'll only take me a minute to wipe that ring up. So you go get a cloth, and then you realize you have to move the pickle jar to really wipe the ring. And the pickle jar is now stuck. You know how pickle jars are. And so you think, it'll only take me a minute. I'll get a hot cloth. And so 30 minutes later, my wife goes by and says, are you cleaning the fridge? No, I'm working on my report. Why? Because I made a rational decision over an irrationally short period of time. It'll only take a minute. It will only take a minute to tidy my desk there. But a minute later, I face the same decision. And let's go back to the very beginning. If you haven't done the self-work that Anne talked about, you're never going to see that what you're doing is just this avoidance game. You're the Teflon person. Yeah. And so a lot of that is just this avoidant behavior, but you are morally, you're trying to keep yourself in a readiness for work because you don't want to admit to yourself that you're not really working. So it's the most interesting form of self-defeating behavior because I've met people who've worked hard all day long and they'll look at me at the end of the day and they'll say, but I never did what I was supposed to do. That kind of thing that Chris was talking about with the list. Yeah. They never took the thing that was really important. They did all this other stuff. Yeah. So why do we do it? It's all part of the avoidance dance.
It's weird the lengths people go through with this stuff too. Like I had one friend who wanted to run a marathon. And so she bought a book on marathon running, and she subscribed to Runner's World. She got a water bottle and new shoes.
That's what I do, and then I don't run.
She ordered all these things over the course of a month. But the only way to run a marathon is
to run a marathon.
To put one foot in front of the other again and again and again until you've run 26 point whatever miles, whatever it is, or whatever kilometers it is. That's the only way to run a marathon.
So do you find that as well?
Yeah.
People are getting ready too much? Because it can be deceiving. People getting ready, I'm reading all the books. I'm getting ready.
Always. You know what? When I started as a professional organizer, which was 15 years ago, my first client had 100 books on organizing and hadn't read them, any of them. So I made a deal with them. I said, we'll do a little contra. I'll take all the books on organizing and I'll teach you how to organize. And that's what happened. But yeah, people do that, I think, because if you have the foundation and you are organized, you have no excuse. There's no more excuses. And there are some productivity personalities. And one of them is get nothing done. I call it get nothing done Gertie. And Gertie just moves things around all the time, We always have a day like that. But paper push, I'm very busy, I'm moving things around. And sometimes it's just your basic personality is like that. But it's a fear like anything else. If I have that foundation, then I've got to do it. So I'm going to look for another excuse.
Now, I love Chris's point where he's talking about the most important thing, and I read that from Brian Tracy's book, which is Eat That Frog.
Yes,
and for people at home that don't know what that means, because what do you mean eat a frog? I can't eat a frog. Well, it just means this is Mark Twain's. I think it's Mark Twain that came up with the concept. The very first thing in the morning, the very first thing that you do is eat a live frog. You can pretty much make sure that's the worst thing that's going to happen to you. So how do you determine your frog? Because you said it before, determine that most productive thing that's going to give you the most results. But how, when someone's looking at a list of things to do, how can they determine that for themselves? I'll start with you.
They can determine that if they know their goals. if they know who they're working for, or if they're working for themselves,
So
if they
take
know.
their to-do list and look at their goals at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah. You should have an action plan. So if you're working for a company, the company has strategic plans. The strategic plans, hopefully, are sent down to the various departments, and you, as an individual working for that company, know what the action plan is, know what the goal is, and know what you are supposed to accomplish. And by doing that, then you can start working on what the most important thing is. If you're a procrastinator, you have to work on the one thing that really bugs you.
The frog.
So
That
the frog,
frog.
okay? And that's what I do. I work on the one thing that really bugs me first thing in the morning, and then I say to myself, good for me, because a big part of this, a big part of productivity is not only doing things well, but it's doing them in little bits and rewarding yourself, okay? We can't do it all at once. We can't eat the whole frog. So we've got to do it in little bits.
Well,
But
Brian Tracy says this, if there's 2 frogs, eat the uglier one. Chris, same question.
What was the question again?
Well, it's basically, how do you determine
way past
what
my
is
bed.
productive and what's not? How do you
What's the
determine that?
frog?
Yeah,
What's
how do
the
you find
frog?
that frog? Someone out there, they
Yeah.
have this list. How can they determine what's
I think like what you said, Anne, you really have to start with your goals. One method that I like to do is to simplify and ask yourself, okay, out of these 20 things that I have to do today, if I could only accomplish one of these things, what would that thing be? And do that for a couple more tasks. And those are the most highest leverage tasks that you can accomplish that day. And one thing that Tim and I were chatting about when I was on his podcast is, you can actually mentally fast forward to the end of the day and ask yourself, okay, if the day is over right now, what will I want to have accomplished? And then those are the things that are the most valuable that you should be working on.
Beautiful.
Well, I like
Dr.
Dan's
Pychyl?
part of the visceral reaction, I'd say. Nobody wants to eat a frog. That's why it's such a good expression. And so when you're looking at your to-do list, in fact, when you get up in the morning what it is because you're already thinking about it. It's already under your skin.
Oh, yeah.
And then what you have to do then is how are you going to get past that visceral reaction? And my mantra is just get started. Don't think about doing the whole thing. And Anne's already said that in her own way that you can't eat the whole frog at once. And so just get started somewhere. Now, I got to let go of the frog metaphor because it's going to get pretty gross, right? But the whole idea is that just get started somewhere in that task. Act as if you're going to do a task. Not being like Gertie, moving things around, but just get going on something, because as your grandmother would tell you, a job begun is a job half done. And if you can just get into that job somewhere, then all of a sudden the other stuff disappears, right? You got to just get started. Not just do it. That's the Nike slogan. This is just get started.
Because you start doing all kinds of things that aren't relevant to the overall result.
No, you got to be on that goal. I'm all for that, but I want
What
to
about the
focus
night
on that
before?
reaction.
Does anybody do that like the night before? They're planning already what they're going to do tomorrow. Because if you wake up in the morning and you start figuring out what your frog is, your mind isn't clear. But if you do it the night before, tomorrow, this is what I'm going to get done. Do you find that's a better approach?
Oh yes, you have to start the night before, or when you leave the office. You have everything neat and tidy, and you know what you're going to do. Otherwise, you don't sleep. Okay, and you wake up in the middle of the night with this great idea. Does everybody do that, and you don't know where to write it down? That kind of thing. So you should have everything planned, even your clothes and all that kind of thing, if you're really anal, and so you're ready to go the next day.
Do you find there's a lot of information out there for people, that real tangible tools that they can use? Like if someone's watching this program right now, where can they go find some tools where they can learn? I know that read your book.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
go to my website.
I think all the websites.
Yeah,
All the
but
websites.
what are some things that they can do from home right now to start? What would you suggest?
Well, I suggest they go to our 3 websites, because I think there's a lot of information on there.
But then
really.
there's a bottomless pit there too. So I
Yeah.
try to give them each something to.
Yeah, I think you have to decide on one area that you'd like to begin. One area that's
right
bothering
now,
you the
there's someone
most.
watching right now. What are they going to do? What can they do right now?
Pick up the phone
They can
and
pick up
call
the
us.
phone and call us. Right.
Pick up the phone and call us, okay, Chris?
I'm going to steal your answer. I think check out our websites. At least I think our approaches to this stuff. We try, of course, pimping your own stuff. It's kind of whatever. But we try to be really practical and tactical with what we talk about. And at least that's what people tell us.
Well, I'll pimp your blog.
No, thank you.
Chris in the beginning of his blog post will say this. It takes this approximately this long to read this, and this is the main idea. So he really walks the talk. because he's saying, you know, I'm not going to waste your time here.
Yeah.
So this is how long it's going to take you. Are you willing to invest that much time? And if you can't, this is the main idea.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, so I think it is worthwhile that way.
Love
And
that.
likewise, the way I like to learn, I listen well. Like I love audiobooks, and I have to drive because I commute. So that's why I got into podcasting. I thought that was just the greatest thing when it came out in the mid-2000s. Yeah, just a chance to kind of absorb that while you're doing other things. So if you're cleaning the house, that's the time to learn this stuff. Yeah. Not to, you know, read 100 books on organization, but there's a lot of great blogs and podcasts out there that are helpful that way. And I'd make it a background noise for a while.
What is the ideal client for you?
The ideal client for me is someone who wants to either move up in their life, or someone who feels they're spinning their wheels and would like to not spin their wheels and would like to start to become more productive and achieve the goals that they want. That they just feel that they're spinning and they're busy, and they just don't know where to go, and they feel that they're just not accomplishing anything. And the world now, with all the technology and everything, is very, very difficult for people, and you really have to pick and choose. And a lot of people just get totally overwhelmed, okay? So anybody who's overwhelmed, anybody who needs to move on in life, and anybody who needs a foundation to allow them to do so, I'd be happy to help them.
Chris, same question.
That's the great thing with coaching is, you know, you're kind of stuck in your world, not stuck, but kind of at ground level all the time. So it's really, really helpful to have somebody at that kind of 10,000 foot level who can kind of see your work from that broader perspective and know what questions to ask. And yeah, it's really, really helpful. Yeah.
Well, I don't take clients the same way, but I want to turn the table a bit and say, you know, the procrastination is a deeply existential thing. It's about our living. Like, it's not getting on with life itself. And Anne said that in so many different ways, and this last year for Chris has been an experiment in that, you know, you got to get on with your life. And so that's why I talk about this personal flourishing. It's not productivity to make more widgets for someone. It's not necessarily even to make more money. It's to make a life. And so the moment you find yourself becoming your own worst enemy, that's the kind of person I want to talk to and talk with, so that they better understand, right back to the beginning of the show tonight, and self-work, this idea of understanding self.
I love it. I love it. Of course, the number is 613-728-1001. Well, sorry, 1001. Yeah, that's the number. And you get this. You can get a copy of this. We'll talk more after this. We're back, and we're talking about productivity here. We have a panel of experts on productivity, and of course, we've also been talking about procrastination. And of course, the number you can call, this is the last segment, so please call us. Please? No, just joking. 613-728-1001. And of course, if the two callers that will call will get a free copy of Dr. Pychyl's book, Solving the Procrastination Puzzle. Actually, what can we find in this book?
What can you find in that book?
Wow.
10 pretty concise chapters about why we procrastinate, about the costs of procrastination, and then the kind of things we can do to change it. But I do a lot of myth busting. Like, it's not about time management. You know, that it's that self-work. And then what about personality, and what about willpower? And surprisingly, near the end, I talk about self-forgiveness, because we've done a study on self-forgiveness and procrastination. And you would think that if you forgave, it'd be like forgive and forget and just procrastinate some more. But it's not the case. When we have a little self-compassion, because it's always 2 steps forward and 1 step back, when we have a little self-compassion, we're still motivated to go forward. It'd be like if you and I had a fight. What would be my motivation? I'm avoiding Alfonso. But if someone offers some forgiveness, no, we don't want to. I don't want to see you at all. You don't want to see me. But if we offer forgiveness, it's like, Alfonso, it's great to be together again. But this time the transgression's against the self. And we're always going to have those days where we don't meet our own goals, expectations. And so that's the kind of thing that's in the book. It starts from understanding why and how and what the costs are to, so what's in it for me.
So I like that. I like that point, because I'm going to ask you both, do you think we get in the way of ourselves? And what is some examples that you've seen?
We do get in the way of it. I think we get into a rut. And we get in the way of ourselves the same time every time. So whenever something comes at us that we're not happy with, and if you're working in a business atmosphere, you're working on similar things, and you know it's coming, and you know you don't like to do it, and you know it's not the best use of your time, but you have to do it because it's part of your business. Mm-hmm. I think in that case, we do get in our own way, and it would take a lot of work to not get in our own way. But it can be done, and it's worth it, because you've got something else that you don't have to worry about and expend your energy on.
Chris?
Yeah, one of the most interesting stats I think I came by over the course of the year was that what we say to ourselves, 60 to 80% of what we say to ourselves is negative. Like, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this, I won't be able to do this. All these negative self-talks that we have with ourselves. And I think that's the key. You guys talked about self-deception and being kind to yourself. That's really the key. That's step 0 with this stuff, because if you're hard on yourself all day long, you're gonna get in your own way, like you said, with becoming more productive. You have to get out of your own way, and I think you have to start with identifying how you're talking to yourself and just how kind you are to yourself. I might sound kind of like a hippie right now, but you really do have to be nice to yourself. Yeah. Give yourself a hug out there.
Give yourself a hug, okay? Let's all give ourselves a hug.
Wrap your arms.
And a round of applause.
Especially if you're a procrastinator. Yeah. You have to do the little bits, and you've got to reward yourself.
People think, okay, these guys, they're, only high-level people can be coached by someone at your level. Who really needs the coaching? Is it the people at the high level, or is it people at the low level? Someone watching this program might want to ask that question.
That's a really interesting question. And I don't think there's high and low levels, but I think the sooner you do it, I don't care where you are, the better it is. And if you're just starting out in your career or in your life, I think it would do you a great justice to be coached and to get those good habits, okay? And so that by the time you reach the high level, as I mentioned before, you can work on the big stuff, okay? And this comes up all the time in my coaching, okay? I want you to work on the big stuff. I don't want you to be in the weeds. I want you to be you're being paid the big bucks to think outside the box. So get yourself up there and get your staff organized, get your staff productive. And that starts with you, with your action plans and strategic planning and things like that. So I think the sooner you start, the better it is.
Chris?
Yeah. I think I'm like Tim like this. I'm not taking on any new coaching clients, so you can have. But I think,
Okay, we have a caller.
Oh, cool.
Her name is Mel.
Hey, Mel.
Mel?
Yes, hello, greetings, good evening. I'm very much appreciate, and I'm listening closely to your program, and I do appreciate the more specific indications of how to be productive, and I'm very interested in the book. Although I'm retired, and I was very organized when I worked, it's very difficult to be so well organized when one's retired. The personal life interferes with everything, and you should just see my dining room table.
Yeah.
So, and I have to keep my mind from becoming the same model, and it's very difficult to deal with papers when you get older. That's my problem. But I'd like to read the book.
Okay, we'll go here.
Okay, so dealing with papers, and these papers are pertaining to what?
Well, just the household stuff. It's very basic stuff of bills, invoices, calendar, upcoming events, trying to keep a social life as well as keep on top of everything. And as one gets older, actually, one does neglect the paperwork. It becomes more of a challenge.
It definitely does. And do you have a system for your paperwork?
Well, you wouldn't think so looking at my
It's called the dining room table.
It's called the dining room table. So you don't need a fancy system. If you had a very, very simple filing system for your paperwork.
Well, I've got files and I've got boxes, and I have had such, a semi-organization, but I haven't. There's been a hiatus, and I haven't kept up with it. And I'm not on the internet because I'm a senior, and I was never trained in it. That was the days when you had a personal executive secretary who took all my dictation and did all the typing while I did my clinical work. And so I don't have those skills, and I really feel handicapped, actually.
Well, let's say you're still, believe me, you could learn very, very easily, and you could actually store everything right on the computer. You wouldn't have any paper at all.
Well, theoretically, I appreciate that, but I just didn't know whether I'd have enough guidance and feedback and the voice over my shoulder saying, no, press this, press that, because I don't, I'm not terribly comfortable with the face and look of a typewriter.
Oh, well, then you can do your papers.
Well, I have to. At the moment.
How do you feel when you look at the dining room table?
Well, first of all, yes, I'd like to become more ordered with my dining room table, release it from this burden, and then perhaps with a little help I could get things on. I could go to a library and get things put onto a screen.
I just want to thank you for calling in. Do you have something, Chris, to add real quickly, because we have another caller?
Really quickly. Okay, I would recommend scheduling maybe 5 minutes to clean it, because once you just simply get started on that process, you'll find yourself wanting to do it for 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. Yeah. Start as small as possible, shrink the amount of time till you're comfortable with it, do that, and then you'll want to keep going.
We have Sharon on the line with a question.
I'll take your advice and...
Sorry, Mel.
Sorry, Mel.
You'll get the book, don't worry. We have Sharon on the line.
She gets a book, that's good. That's the important part.
Sharon?
Hello?
Sharon.
Well,
can I talk to Mel for just a second?
Yeah, put Mel back on the phone.
Mel, once a year I declare email bankruptcy.
Yes.
Okay, so
you might just want to get rid of that paper.
I think you guys, called it. People waited to the end. They procrastinated. Okay, so some tips that we can offer people out there. We'll start with you for getting their life, getting life together.
Okay, well, I don't know if you want specific tips or if you want, you definitely need to create a foundation. So just like this lady who called, she needs a foundation for her filing systems, for her information. And you need that before anything else in your life, okay? Because you always have papers and things like that. And you need to plan. Mm-hmm. You need to plan. System, plan, know who you are. Know who you are, know where you want to go, know how you want to get there, and then start to simplify, start to plan, and then you can become productive, okay? But there's all kinds of little tips and tricks that I have. One of the things that I always tell people to do is use a whiteboard, because then you have your goals. I think everybody should have a whiteboard. Yeah. For brainstorming, for goals, for strategic plans. Yeah. If you're a procrastinator, so you put that one thing you want to do on the whiteboard, and you stare at it, and then you feel so good when you wipe it out, right?
Chris?
Oh, there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's millions.
One maybe kind of on the procrastination front is look at your to-do list and look for the tasks that you've kept moving to the next day. And look for the tasks, this is something I always do when I move something from today's to-do list to tomorrow's. I think, okay, why am I moving these over? Why am I procrastinating with these tasks? And I pick up, Tim's book for an example. And I kind of work my way through this and see why the task was aversive in the first place. That's kind of one way. There are hundreds of them. Get stuff out of your head. For every open loop you keep in your head, every to-do, everything that you're waiting on, it weighs you down throughout the day. If you want kind of the focus and mental clarity, pick up David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. This is really in the vein of what he talks about. But B, get everything you have to do out of your head and into some sort of external system. Because or else you'll think, oh, I have to get cat litter, and I have to call her back. And these thoughts will come up to you throughout the day and weigh you down when you should be doing something else.
Quick question on that. Do you, we're going to get to your tips right after that, but I want to ask a question, because you nailed on, you hit something right there. Does it help for people to write things down?
Oh my God, yes. You've got to write things down. And
I'm a big believer in it, right?
Me
So
too.
sometimes it's all up here.
No, I make them write it down, and if they want to do it on a computer, fine, but a lot of people don't want to. Just the act of writing it down sort of makes you feel good, and you can keep control over it. And I also tell people, this is really, that to print out their calendar. Because when you go on the computer and use the calendar, you are you're interrupted, and you're going to go check your emails, and you might check something else, okay? So if you write it out and have your calendar and your to-do list, you will become much more productive very quickly.
Tips?